So that was the cornerstone of my week, was getting that accomplished. So other than that, it's been a slog.
Well, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, if you've got to if you've got to say that is your high point of the week, I'll take it.
Low point was just driving a lot. So what else are you gonna do?
I, you can't do anything but make sure you've got good music or good audiobooks or something because stupid people in traffic just should not be out there.
Yeah, there's so every time I go out there and have to make all these trips and drive up there to get them, then take them where they go, then take them back, then drive back to my house.
Mhm.
Every time I do that, I see some new example of morality or extreme entitlement. It's just ridiculous.
I
It's
don't know.
just absolutely ridiculous.
I've got four words for you: high school car loop.
Oh God.
So if you ever want to see entitlement from a bunch of parents, I am pretty sure anyone who is driving a Range Rover or a Lexus SUV should not be behind the wheel. Just no, because you get in my way. You can't time things properly. And so help me, if you know that your little bundle of joy is not going to be out at the front of the school near the loop to be picked up immediately, don't be in the front of the damn line. Some of us have things to do. Some of us time this, we can be elsewhere. I'm sorry. That's just how I could tell you how I really feel, but yeah, yeah.
Well, there are some people who just have absolutely no self awareness whatsoever, or they seem to think they're above the rest of the human race. So yeah, and some people are just stupid. If they realized what they were doing, they'd be like, "That's dumb. I should do something else." But they just don't. They just don't realize it. Not at all. So what are you going to do with those people?
I don't know. And James is asking, do I drive a BMW? No, I am not that bougie. I drive I have driven an Explorer for almost gosh a good long time. And that's because I'm usually hauling children and bowling equipment around. So
I am going to be that bougie.
that's okay. You can be. I'm the person who pulls up in the car loop and is blaring music that will embarrass children. Because it's either their music and they're like, no, don't do that. Or it's just really loud, like my music, and it will still embarrass the crap out of people.
My dream is to drive this car up to the old folks' home to pick up my parents with 50 Cent blaring through the windows. That's my plan. I think it'll be awesome.
Not drowning pool?
Oh no, we'll have a mix. It'll be a mix of different things. Lamb of God and 50 Cent and Eminem. I think it'd just be perfect.
I mean, granted, I did pull up earlier this week blaring Kendrick. Um, to the point, and the thing is, the sound system is good enough that the car will actually like rumble. So, yeah, it was fantastic.
Never assume malicious behalf of others when it can be explained by pure dumb stupidity. Or yet ignorance
Yup. Yep.
at full volume. I should probably get this show started. Howdy, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Dead Robot Society. I am Paul E. Cooley. Joining me today, Veronica Jaguar, and where the fuck is he?
I, you didn't put him in the third seat, did you?
I've been very careful about that button. That's a button that I try not to brush up against, but I can't guarantee Rogue hasn't hit it at least once. There's nothing can be guaranteed. So
Well, he is new, so we might not understand like how important it is to not hit that button.
maybe,
Mm.
maybe. So it looks like Terry's not joining us today. So this entire episode, we're going to talk shit about him. Just
Oh,
so you know.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Because that's how it's going to work. So,
And if he does jump in chat, we all encourage the rest of you to please give him shit.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
Because that's your responsibility.
Terry's not here with us today because contractors are ripping his house apart, and he figured it would be a little too loud for him to be on the mic with a tile saw going. So we spared you that. But that's not going to keep us from the rest of the format. V, what the hell have you been up to, creatively or otherwise?
Okay, creatively, I have been recording. My pseudonym is getting a lot of work this year already, which I love, because she gets paid. And that's been most of my week. I've gotten some writing done. I am 28,000 words into my current project. There's more in my notebook. I just haven't moved it over there. But I've realized I'm maybe barely about a third of the way in with the plot, and that's not good because romances are supposed to be max 80,000 words, and the math is not mathing, and it could get to 90 or possibly more. But I know there's editing that has to be done. So I'm just going to keep going, and there will be editing, and that's okay. Collaborative story, I think about half a chapter done. Yeah, it's the way I write is weird because I literally have one day a week where certain stuff gets done, and there's a chunk of time, and you just sit down and go. So yeah, that was done. Got another character into trouble last week, so then it wasn't my turn to write this week. That's always good. I love setting things up. That's the joy of collaborative writing. So when you have multiple people having different characters, then when you put the main character in a difficult spot and you're not writing the main character, you can simply sit back and just watch the text go and then throw in suggestions every once in a while. So that is lovely. So,
yeah, that's a good place to be. I'd never thought about it that way, but you could basically play screw the other author by taking their character and put them someplace horrible and make them try and dig them out.
Well, it's agreed upon. There is an outline, so we agree upon the horribleness.
Okay.
But once you finally get stuff laid out properly, it's just fun to watch the magic happen. So yeah, that's been my week.
Cool.
Writing and recording and running workshops for the Audiobook Narrator Association.
All good stuff.
Oh, so much Zoom. So much Zoom. I had someone tell me it wouldn't get when I was running the class, my computer decided to crap out and not let me share sound. So of course people could hear me talk, but I couldn't share the outro music that we had. And so I'm like, sorry about that. And then I just launched into the end and okay, sorry. I know there's hockey on and there will be yelling. So maybe just keep one earbud out. I should know this. So I can yell and go, stop it. There's a show going on. And they won't care.
Probably not. It's hockey.
I know. But crap. What was I talking about?
I don't know.
Shit. Backtrack.
Collaborative writing.
Collaborative writing. I was talking about that. And
this would be sad if somebody in chat reminds us before we remember.
I know. Whatever. I was rambling and I don't know. So how are you? How's your week been? How has your writing been?
Oh God, writing? What's that?
It's when you take the words from here and you put them here on a screen or on a page.
Oh, I did some of that. I did do some of that. I did a whopping 2,000 words of it. It was ridiculous. Video's not working?
No, my sound wasn't working when I was talking about.
Oh, right. That's what it was. See, there we go. You were talking about how drunk you were.
It has been a long time since that has happened, but
One of my chief jobs now is to be my parents' chauffeurs to take them to doctor's appointments.
Ah,
And
yes.
that took up probably about 30 hours this week, if not more, in total. So I drove all over hell and gone, had to sit in doctor's offices and time between appointments and everything else. So it's been a hellish week as far as getting anything done. It has been like having a job, which
It,
sucks, but it is what it is. But
but
I wrote the last two chapters of Extinction. I wrote the final
woohoo,
scene. I wrote the final everything, and I'm
nice.
fairly happy with it. I did another pass of the entire novel before I tried to write the rest of the ending, and it's actually, I think, in pretty good shape. I think there's still one thing I want to go back and look at and see if it can be made longer, but I'd like to get another 2,000 words of it. Would be nice.
Okay.
So I have to think about that. My betas may tell me differently, but we'll see. It's not ready for beta. It needs a third pass before I even think about giving it betas, but we're close. We are really close, which
So
makes me
close.
extremely happy. Yes.
So close, just creeping over your shoulder, tapping you right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it's
You
pretty
can
much just like,
smell the
whoop.
sizzling.
Yeah, smell the sizzling. So I had this realization the other night. It's like I'm saying goodbye to these characters that have been with me for over 10 years and closing the door
Mm-hmm.
and pretty much locking it.
Yeah.
That I still haven't processed that yet. I still haven't quite processed it yet. But I think it'll actually be easier than closing the door on the characters from the Derelict Saga. I think because I got to spend so much time with them in different ways, whereas the Black is kind of fractured into separate stories, take place in separate timelines, etc. Ad infinitum. They don't seem to have the same pull that the characters of Derelict do, and I can't really explain it. It's just a matter of I think some of my favorite characters I've created are in the Derelict Saga. So if I ever close the door on that puppy, I think that's going to hurt a lot more. I think that's going to hurt a lot more. But at the same time, I had a good time with these characters. I had a good time with the stories. I had a good time with the monsters. I
It's
had a good time with Poppy
plural.
and Hal. So there's at least that going on. But it was something else to write the last sentence and just sit there and look at it for a minute and go, I think I'm done. So it was just one of those moments. So anyway, it was crazy. But we're not here to talk about that necessarily.
No? What are we here to talk about?
That's a very good question because Terry, the son of a bitch, gave me the idea or put down the idea for provocative writing and provocateurs and then bailed on us.
That
Completely
that
bailed
seems
on us.
that that seems very irresponsible.
It does seem irresponsible and unprofessional as all get out.
Ugh. Well, did he explain what he meant by provocative writing? Because that could mean a lot of different things. It could. I don't think he means the genre
No, no, no,
per
no, no,
se.
no. No, no,
Okay,
no.
so we can rule that out.
No, no. This goes across genres. He actually brought up the movie Tropic Thunder.
Oh Lord.
If you haven't seen Tropic Thunder, put on a thick skin and go watch it. It is unbelievably insane. But
Okay, all right.
there's a character in there. Oh, James, come on. There's a character in there who is played by Robert Downey Jr., who's basically sort of playing an extreme version of himself, who's a method actor, and he's going to play a black character. So he has his skin pigment changed, and starts talking differently and everything else. And then there's a real black actor playing a real black character, and there's some really funny shit that goes on there. But it's extremely provocative because it brings up a whole ton of issues just based on that. Because you're basically having a character walk around in permanent blackface if you want to be completely insensitive about it. So It breaks all these rules, takes all these social norms, and just shatters them all over the place. And it does a whole bunch of different stuff in it. But it is very provocative. It provokes a response, and it's one
Right.
of complete unease. It just is so awkward, that whole idea. It definitely grabs some people the wrong way,
Oh yeah, I bet. And
but it was
see,
meant to.
right. And now that you've like described it like that, it reminds me of one of my absolute favorite movies. I can probably quote the majority of it. That falls, I'm pretty sure it falls into that category more so now than when it was first made, because the some of the key plot things, um, viewed in a different light, they don't hold up as well.
Mhm.
But for the way that they're treated, um, it's Heather's. So like the
Oh
original.
God,
But think about it. I mean, I it was first described to me as a cult of cruelty.
that's a good way of describing it. That
Yeah.
goes for dangerous liaisons too.
Mm-hmm. And it's it's just like the way certain really, really serious topics are addressed. They're either turned into punchlines or they're turned into funeral notes and obituaries.
And that
So
movie just deals with one of the most, it's very uncomfortable, teenage suicide, and it becomes a joke.
it 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 does. And the I know you don't like musicals. It's okay. They did Heather's as a musical,
Mm.
as an off Broadway musical. It's really good. It sticks very close to the script, and it tweaks a couple character things and meshes a couple characters together, but it doesn't try to update it.
Right.
It keeps it squarely in like 1989. And because of that, it still tackles the same topics with that same irreverence. And then there's singing and dancing, which just makes it even stranger. Um, but it grabs people's attention. It forces people to confront challenging topics.
Right.
Um, and then I'm seeing in chat Blazing Saddles. Yes. I think almost anything. There are plenty of things that, Mel Brooks has his hands on that would count as provocative writing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think really provocative writing and provocative storytelling is a mainstay of satire,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of the point. It's like when the fuck is your name wrote A Modest Proposal. Jonathan Swift wrote A Modest Proposal, was basically saying that England should end the Irish famine by eating babies, and basically eating the Irish, and that will make the famine go away. It was absolutely insane. And you got that, and then you've got God, now Candide, for instance.
Oh yeah. Why do
Insane.
they make 10th graders read that? I mean, I had to read it in 10th grade. I don't know if they do it anymore, but I'm like, have a bunch of 14 and 15-year-olds read that? You remember nothing except the lady who only wound up with half her ass. That was
Or
it.
the or the woman who was raped 1,000 times, but she's okay. Everything's fine.
Exactly.
Just
So,
what? And the fact the character just sits there and just lets all this wash over without any comment, without any
yeah, it's
understanding of the import of
yeah.
the things that are going on around him. It's brutally beautiful, is what it is.
But it's the sort of thing that it's not new. I
No,
mean, we're pulling references from way back. So is it I think it's prevalent in almost every genre. It's not
yeah,
specific to one or another.
no,
And I don't know if I mean like science fiction. It's I wonder if there are oh, what was that? I'm wondering if there are older works that, when they're seen 20 or 30 years later, are going to show up as, provocative writing.
Well,
But
I mean, the truth is that generations change, and when you get
yeah.
enough generations in between, I think a lot of the context or touchstones get completely lost, or at least they're so muddied. Wow, this is a bad metaphor. They're so mossy and grown over with so many dead leaves that it makes it very, very difficult for people to find them because they're not just sitting out in the open. And that's part of like getting educated on what was going on at the time when he wrote Candide, to understand what he was getting at,
Hmm.
to understand what was going on with the Irish famine when Jonathan Swift wrote what he wrote, is
Hmm.
to understand, if you understand the context and you have some of the touchstones, and then some of this stuff will make a hell of a lot more sense. And then you go, wow, for that time period, that was huge. That was like showing full frontal nudity in the United States in the 60s. It would have been that provocative. I mean, it doesn't mean much to us now, but basically you go back and look at some of those classic works and some of the things that they were saying at the time, and given the context and the historical import of what they were talking about, it changes the flavor of the work if you know what the things were that were going on at that time and in that writer's life and that storyteller's life. It changes the flavor of how those characters come across, and it arms you with some interesting. It arms you with the tools to actually understand why it is a classic. But
Hmm.
if you don't have those tools, it's just gobbledygook, because a lot of it doesn't have any place with our history as it is now.
Yep.
So basically, my 2 cents from provocative writing, and the street was pretty provocative,
Yes.
is that there are times when you can go way too far, and there are times when you just don't go far enough. And it's a balance, and I think you have to really think about what it is you're trying to do when you get that crazy. I had a mission in mind, and I think I accomplished it very well in the street.
Yeah.
And that was to have a good time, but at the same time, I wanted to make a comment about the '80s.
Hmm.
Basically, I described the street as New Jack City meets Noir. I mean, that's really with Muppets. That's
Hmm.
basically how that thing can be described.
With puppets.
Yeah, with puppets. And so, it it made a lot of difference in how I wrote that story, and I could have taken that so much further and decided that there
Oh,
were
absolutely.
there were
Absolutely. Well,
places I
since,
needed to close the door.
yes.
And I closed the door because that was not the point of the story. The point of the story was watching Oscar go through all this crazy shit, seeing all the insanity. It wasn't to spend time on the more disgusting things I could have shown you. I insinuated them,
Hmm.
but I did not go into them necessarily. And I think insinuating them was much more fun. Like, I don't explain what the punching bag, or excuse me, the vibrator with the boxing glove on the end of it was used for. I let your imagination do that. So
Indeed.
you got basically you got a chance to say what you need to say, and do it in such a way that it's going to raise their eyebrows. It may even piss them off. But the point is not to make that the point of the book. You can
Right.
include those scenes. You can include those characters who may say something completely off the wall every once in a
Hmm.
while. That's kind of expected. That's life.
Yeah. I think another one, another thing that, of course, started as a comic, and then more people know it from the screen, is V for Vendetta.
Mm.
That's definitely with a lot of the imagery and insinuation with what goes on, how people are treated, consequences of certain actions, and the acceptance of the new normal by some people.
Yeah.
That's
Not
definitely,
just acceptance, embrace.
yeah, weird. But I wonder, and that's the thing. It's the sort of thing that comes. I think it works really well in like suspense thrillers and sci-fi, because it's easy. It's very easy, at least in present day, to project forward and then take a couple bits of society, say, what if this happens? And then project it out and kind of have that the extreme statement. I mean, of course, you can go back, but
No politics on this show, please. The I think that's doing that in these genres. Sci-fi has always been famous for basically making social commentary.
yeah,
That's how it started out. Because you couldn't talk about the things that were happening now, you had to talk about them taking place somewhere else. You had to talk about, you had to create fantasy in order to make certain statements about what was going on with in the politics of the time or whatever else. So you had to basically go through those machinations to say some of the things you wanted to say.
yeah. I think I think fantasy wound up taking the I think that dealt a lot more like class structure.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, and Rowdy points out in the chat, Star Trek for its time was hellaciously provocative.
Yeah, you had the
Oh my gosh,
first
I can't
black
believe you did
kiss.
this. But, and nowadays we're like, oh yeah. And then but rewatching certain things, it's not as provocative because, in certain cases, society caught up to the future.
Right.
And then other things that were seen as, oh yeah, that's cool. We're like, James T. Kirk, could you not? That is too much. Please. So.
Matt says Fight Club was so much better on its second watch. Definitely watched it with different eyes than first time. Have you read the book? You read the book, Matt? Have you read the book, Veronica?
I have not.
Have you seen the movie?
No, because
Okay.
At the time, the types of folks who were like, "Oh yeah, you have to see this movie," I did not have a lot in common with them, and I was like, I don't need this as part of my repertoire. I'll stick to musicals. Happy.
The book is amazing. It has a very different ending than the movie. Very different ending than the movie.
Okay.
It is. You would think Fight Club is all about the Fight Club. It's not. That is just a distraction that holds the thing together.
I know that much. I mean, I know the punchline at the end of the movie. I know how things work out.
It's a hell of a good book. It's a hell of a good ride. It's very well done. The acting and directing is fantastic, and they stole so much of the text. For the movie. It's great. It's wonderful.
That reminds me, another good example of provocative writing in popular culture, Dexter. So the Dexter short stories, and then how that has gotten, how that translated to the first series. We're not going to talk about the second, the whole living in the forest thing. He's not. No, that doesn't happen. The new one, the kind of like what made him. Oh my gosh, so good. But writing, I think anytime you write a villain as a hero because they are targeting even more awful people, I think that's definitely an example of provocative writing.
I See Dead People movie was great.
The Sixth Sense, yes.
Sixth Sense.
That's okay.
You saw it randomly
okay.
once. You had no idea what it was.
No, I get that. There's sometimes you see movies or you see clips of things, and then people say, "Oh yeah, that movie. Have you seen it?" No.
I highly recommend Fight Club. I highly recommend it. It's got so many good things to say that are just basically punching the upper class in the nuts. It's just wonderful.
I mean, hey,
it's wonderful. But regardless, if you keep tracking of the movies that we're talking about, they're basically all there's some politics or some social commentary level there that is going on that these authors are playing with. And at times it becomes integral to the story, but it doesn't pick a side necessarily. And I think that's one of the tricks, and I think that's why certain genres of movies or films or books do not work, is because they're completely one-sided. And I would urge you writers to not make that mistake. It's one thing to have it as a central pivot point, but if you're only going to show one side of the equation, then you've got a problem.
Yeah, then you wind up you
It becomes sarcasm, or it just becomes melodrama. It's just, it doesn't have
yeah,
any oomph.
it becomes a morality lecture.
Yeah, and nobody wants
And
that.
that's people are going to the arts to escape things. So if you want to say something in that provocative writing, put both sides out there. That's the thing, if you're representing your protagonist and antagonist honestly, people are going to be able to see and make and come to the same conclusions. So,
Right. 1984 is terrible. No, I think 1984, the book, anyway, I haven't seen the movie, doesn't show one side. It really doesn't. Just like Fahrenheit 451 doesn't. It does and it doesn't. It's really, really hard to go through it. He fights with monsters. Jason Yancey goes on the rants.
Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Lit RPG, I have not. Again, references. I know what it is. I know who writes it. I haven't experienced it.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry. There's only so much time.
No, you don't have to apologize for anything. I guess basically, we've kind of run through this topic. I just think it's fun, and I will basically pick my spear up and start jabbing shit every once in a while in one of my books. I mean, The Black was obviously, I wouldn't go on a rant about BP, and there's not a single thing I said in there that is not true about BP. And most people don't know that, so I put that in the book. Because it still pisses me off. Fuck those people. But I also worked for BP for a little while, so I know which I speak. God damn, what a cesspool of shitheads.
No,
anyway.
I could do the same thing about higher ed.
Yeah, it's just
exact
true.
Same thing. And I could happily tell you firsthand about, experiences working at a shipyard and being one of 5 female engineers in a group of about 200 people in 2001. It's fantastic. So yeah, it's there are always those like things that you can put in and kind of jab at, but just smashing it in somebody's face.
Mm-hmm.
That's lazy writing.
Yeah, I agree. It is lazy writing. I would say it's one of the reasons why a lot of Christian books and stories and etc. don't really stick around in the psyche, because they become a morality play, and it kind of causes a problem for them getting any kind of traction.
Well,
and they're cheesy as all get out.
I think that's a different thing. There's a lot of those people. Based upon the formula, there's a definite right ending. So if you're going to end the story properly, certain conditions are going to be met. And if they are not met, then they don't fit the genre, and they're not going to sell, and people are going to pan them. So they work for the audience that they are for, but not necessarily for anyone else. And that audience isn't what Xander's saying in the chat. Their audience is to comfort those in the space. It's very similar to, why people enjoy reading very formulaic romance novels. I know how it's going to end. It's going to end with a happily ever after. I'm good with that. That's why I'm reading the book.
Oh, God. Ugh.
I know.
Matt says this is like the reality of working in music. Everyone thinks it runs on sex and drugs. It doesn't. It runs on gaffer tape. Kind of like me these days.
And caffeine.
There's so much truth to that.
There's some caffeine in there.
Yeah, there's a lot of caffeine in there. That's the other thing about, behind the scenes of some of this stuff, and I've worked with with musicians, and you never know what you're going to get. If I ever finish track 9, you'll finally understand what my relationship with a certain band was. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. Yeah.
You wanted to count out all the brown M&Ms for the green room.
No, nothing like that. There's so much more. So much more insanity. I mean, you just got no idea. Anyway, I'll leave that for track 9. I just got to finish the goddamn book. So I'll get to eventually if I can figure out what these next 2 books are. Somebody asked if I'd figured out my next horror story, and the word is no, not exactly. I have an idea to set it in Antarctica around 1982, which is when the thing was filmed. But it will have nothing to do with The Thing.
No.
But the reason I want to do 1982 or thereabouts is because there's a lot of media I want to bring in, media references. There's a lot of other things I want to bring in. But also, get rid of these pesky satellite phones and cell phones and everything else. Get rid of all of that crap.
That is one of the joys of writing stuff and setting it. You know, my brain was about to say 20 years back. I'm like, baby, no, it's like 40 years back. Stop.
43 years ago.
Shut
Oh my
up.
God. I know.
Shut
I
up.
know. I know. I know. I know. I know. I inherited some firearms, and I didn't know how old they were, so I went and looked. And the one I took to the range a couple weeks ago is 50 years old, and it was just like I'm holding a piece of history, and I had no idea of it.
It was just an AARP card.
Yeah, it's older than almost older than I am. It's scary. It really is scary.
Oh, goodness.
There are no cell phones with computers in fantasy books, Paul. Just read them. No.
There's
No.
magic. That. I mean, granted, I might have something in a notebook there, but yeah. My brain doesn't shut off. It's so bad. But that might be a good thing. Anyway.
On creature feature topics, have you ever seen boxer crabs? They use sea anemones as boxing gloves.
Okay, that feels like an after dark YouTube search.
It does. I probably mentioned this, but there's a octopi, a species of octopi that will kill a man of war and use its tentacles as a weapon. And if that doesn't scare the shit out of you, I don't know what will. And if I ever find a way to put that in the book, you goddamn well better believe I'm going to put it in the book. Homicidal octopi with lashing humans with man of war tentacles. I just love this idea. It would just be so much fun.
We'll call it jelly whipped.
I hate you. Really fucking hate you. Wow, we have some things to talk about in After Dark now, let me tell you.
Oh, don't we? Don't we? Oh, goodness.
Is the vulture bees and honey badgers haven't inspired you? I like it. I don't have a setting for it. And I don't have a story to go with it. I have sort of a story to go with the Antarctica one so far. There's other, I've also been looking at the fungus. Various fungi, and I'm not talking about cordyceps because everybody knows that one, but there's other ones that do some interesting stuff and attack spiders in certain ways and this, that, and the other. And it's kind of fun to imagine what would happen if one of those puppies, one of those fungi managed to cross species. What would it do?
Well, I think given a lot of, at least, and that's the thing, viruses are one thing, fungi are another.
Mm-hmm.
We know that certain viruses will jump species.
Right.
And have different symptoms and different
attributes.
outcomes. Yeah, but viruses are inherently always changing, whereas fungi don't necessarily go that fast.
Correct.
So
but it's what they do to their, that you can't, a fungi itself isn't dangerous, right? A fungi is not dangerous. It's what it does to you once it gets to you. It's not exactly going to be chasing you down a hallway.
No, no. So, what was I? So I finished. I'm halfway through the first book of what is it? A Discovery of Witches,
Hmm.
which has a really, really interesting, and things I watched the series the whole way through too. Um, but it has a really interesting take on what, like the chemical and chromosomal and mitochondrial reactions that happen when a vampire tries to turn a human,
Hmm.
and the actual
Yeah.
changes that happen, and why certain diseases happen in a vampire. And it's not because the vampire who turns the human is bad. It's because there's something inherent or sleeping in the human DNA. And then when it encounters the vampire DNA to start the change, that's when something mutates, and that's when something kicks over.
Right.
So
You should read The Strain.
I remember starting watching it. I should read it. I
You should
should.
read all three
There's a
books.
lot of there's a lot of stuff I should read. I can't listen to it though because one, I don't think who narrates it. Look at that.
Robert Perlman does the first book, and then Don Oreskes does the other two.
Oh, yeah, I'll have to read it. Not that I don't like absolutely love their narration, but I learned the hard way that I cannot listen to that. I will get can't separate. Will get messed up. So
James, did you really make an Aztec camera reference? I can't believe I remembered the name of the band, but the moment you did that, three things happened. I remembered the name of the band, I remember the video, and I remember where I was when I first saw the video. So thank you for that brain damage down memory lane. I really appreciate it. Bastard.
and Jr. the the TV series is interestingly cast. For Discovery of Witches, AMC, it's got 3 seasons. I think each season has 7 or 8 episodes. Um, but it was very well done. Granted, I finished watching the series before I started reading the books. Um, if you read The Magicians and then watched The Magicians, it's very much like that kind of derivation. So
Okay.
I enjoyed it. You're being
Why?
invaded by animals.
I am.
It's a
There's a cat and a
puppy.
dog.
And a candy. Yes, I'm here.
Do you mind? Get out of here. Thank you. Sorry about that. I'll be out there in 20 minutes. I promise. Silly dog. Yeah, I can always block you, James. Be very careful what you do. Giving me earworms, you son of a bitch. Good reference, though. Yeah, we'll talk about that after dark. Listened to Liberty Station and heard of a certain horror writer in the novel.
Yep.
Wonder who that might have been.
No idea.
Not a clue. Have you all read this vampire post-apocalypse book called The Passage by Justin Cronin?
Dude.
Never heard of it.
Okay. One, listen to it. Scott Brick narrates it. It is phenomenal. However, I started listening to it at the height, the summer of COVID. So 2020. And again, hit too close to home. So, but it is a masterfully done audiobook. It has a lot of really, really good premises for a different take on vampires and zombies and all this. But it was really well done. I just picked the wrong time to listen to it. And Scott Brick, I don't think there's anything that Scott Brick narrates that isn't phenomenal. But he did such a great job with it. And he's really nice. He is a really, really nice person. Yeah, the Liberty Station audiobook, probably narrated by some hack.
Probably. It was definitely written by some hack. I haven't even introduced Steam Powered Giraffe in the chat.
I have
Huh?
heard of steam-powered giraffe. Thank you very much.
I'm afraid. I'm very afraid. You people
Oh, it's
scare
kind of
me.
cool. No. Uh, steampunk music,
I can. Oh, okay. Gotcha.
if I remember correctly.
Definitely not my bag.
No.
And yet my bag. It's very confusing. I have
Maybe
ideas
too
for
much.
steampunk, but it won't be steampunk. It would be coolly steampunk, and it wouldn't transfer very well to a steampunk audience. When you start making Dropkick Murphy references, I'm officially on board.
Mm.
Oh no. The story just seemed to drag on. Ah, there you go. You like them more than you think, Paul. Okay, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
All right. Now,
Hmm.
I've got a face for radio. What is this attraction marketing bullshit? Are you trying to say that I can't do marketing because I'm not attractive?
No. What I'm saying is, so attraction marketing is essentially the idea that you don't market to sell. You're not necessarily marketing just to sell your book. I mean, you do want to sell your book. Or in my case, I want to get hired by people so I can narrate audiobooks that they can then sell. The idea behind attraction marketing is making people like you, more or less, by being relatable and by showing what you have and making them want it. So it would be a really good example of this. And again, I'm going to go back to Romance Land and the marketing that happens there. But one of the things that authors will do is they'll put up, the book cover, and then they'll write next to it the different tropes that it happen that deal with it, or they'll put up a page, like they'll put up just a bit of the page and they'll highlight a couple really, not explicit things, but the stuff leading up to explicit things to grab your attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also just knowing what your brand is and sharing. So if it's like, oh, well, I'm a horror writer and here's, the best book that I read in my genre this month. I really liked it. I think you'll like it too. So it's advertising and being human. And because of that, people will like you and want to support you, hire you, what have you. I'm very bad at it. I am. It's like, because when I have to get better at it.
Right.
And so I've got to figure out what am I going to put out there. So I can, like, I post about hockey. If I go to a hockey game, I post about it. Why? Well, I like it, but it's also something I want to narrate in. So I'm going to be, hey, yeah, I'm really enthusiastic about this. I know the game. I have my favorite teams. And because of that, you should hire me to narrate your hockey romance because I love it. I love that sort of thing. I'm going to do well with it. I post about coffee. Why? I like coffee. I want to find other people who like coffee. So
I want to be consoled by people who like coffee.
But it's that sort of it's that idea. So, and I think a lot of people struggle with it because, like, oh, I need to post stuff. How in so many words do I say, sell my book, buy my book, here it is. How do you repurpose and repackage that and not bore everybody?
That is the biggest problem with social media right now is everybody's trying to hawk something.
But it's not just social media because you can
No, it's
also do it
not.
with newsletters.
Yes. Newsletter.
And that's
Oh,
the thing.
God.
Well, I mean, I think it's easier to do with newsletters because there's more real estate. And generally people subscribe to newsletters because they want to hear from you. And not just they're not in it for just a book that you wrote. They're in it for you and what you wrote and what you will write.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I think that you look at the success of Scott Sigler, for instance, with his podcast, it's because from the very get go, he built a personality for that podcast. And that personality was not necessarily him, but it was a personality that he could just kind of like turn on and turn off depending on what he was doing. But he was very genuine when he wanted to be genuine.
Hmm.
But he,
Yeah.
he would threaten his listeners. He would do all sorts of crazy shit way back in the olden days. And it was part of what was so fun because I kind of looked forward to his couple of minutes of mayhem because it was always just some crazy shit he was going to talk about before we got into the story.
Hmm.
And I aped that as well as much as possible as far as, give people about a minute and a half, 2 minutes max of what's going on in my life or this week or whatever, and just basically go on from there. And sometimes it lets people know, hey, there's a lot of shit going on right now. I don't really have time to do this. Or if you haven't gotten this in Patreon, this is why. Read between the lines. I'm in hell right now. But the basically being able to say, tell a funny story about a pet. Tell a funny story about what's going on with the house or your job or anything else. Those things make you a real person. You don't necessarily get on the podcast and say, hey, buy my book for a minute and a half. You don't do that. You get on there and you talk about other stuff and then maybe work in a 10-second pitch for your Patreon or buy me a coffee or whatever else. So I think you're right. But perhaps attraction marketing is the wrong way to put it. But
I don't. It's a weird moniker for it.
Yeah, it's a weird moniker for it. But regardless, I understand what you're saying, and I think if you're an author, and hopefully your readers interact with you by commenting on your site or sending you emails or whatever else occasionally, it's fun to see. Like for instance, on YouTube, I'll get some comments that are just really blow me away. Some of the other ones, I just go, "Did you actually listen to any of these episodes?" It just really depends on, what you get. But the thing is, responding back to that is also a big deal.
Yeah.
Because people want to feel like that you heard them, that you're listening to them. You may not agree with what they say, but you're listening to them. Mm-hmm. And that's a boon we have now that we didn't really have back in the day. Because back then it would all be snail mail, and you can't really get responses very quickly. So it was kind of a different animal, but the ability to do that is something you kind of have to practice and you have to be kind of careful about because you can take it too far and you can let them take it too far for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So you don't want a bunch of squeaky wheels, and we actually were going to talk about that in one of the other episodes. We just never got to it. But there's only so much dancing you can do as the monkey, because guess what? You have to actually get words down. You have to actually get things narrated. You have to actually get your job done. And while this is part of your job, it cannot take up most of your time.
Yeah. And that's a challenge. And
Yeah,
just because, and we talk a lot about write what you want to write. And at the end of the day, yeah, you can have people say, oh, I really wish you would write, another story in this universe or a short story here or something focused on these characters. But, if that's not what drives you and you're not immediately getting paid to do that thing, that's what fan fiction is for. Just don't tell the author.
Unless you contact them first and ask.
Unless you contact them first and you have clearance and all that. And even then, don't contact the author because they technically can't read it. Or shouldn't read it, I say. That's the better phrase. Shouldn't read it.
JR says, what is a good open rate for a newsletter? And what about a click rate on the links in a newsletter? Dude, I have no idea. My newsletter is an absolute fail. It is just a field of fail. So I would not be a good person to ask.
I would say anything above 50 is good. But the thing is, not every email client treats reds and opens the same way.
True.
So you could be getting false numbers. I know that sometimes I can see something in a preview and then it may not count as open, even though I read everything.
Right.
But yeah.
James says, I think Paul knows I would totally reach out if I even mentioned his work. Gee, I wonder how we know that. That was a sweet reference, by the way. I really got a kick out of that. Anyway, marketing has never been one of my boons. It's never been something in my wheelhouse that I've done very well at all, ever, and probably never will, unfortunately. I really should hire somebody for that, but I have no money. But the bottom line is, I do what I can, and I try and be as welcoming to the readers as possible and the listeners, especially the new folks, because new folks are finding me on the podcast, they're finding me on YouTube all the time, and half the time they don't even know what they're getting into. It's like somebody said, you should go listen to The Black, and then we're like, what the fuck is that? And they go listen to it, and they're like, ooh, I think I like this. And then they go to the second book, and then the third book, and then they start leaving me comments and hate mail. It's wonderful.
And then they go into your back catalog, and they're like,
and then they go to the
crap.
back catalog. They're like, what the fuck is this derelict thing? And why does it have 147 episodes? You know, stuff like that. It's fun. It's fun when they interact with you, and when you can interact back with them. And especially when it's a safe space for everybody, so to speak.
Yeah.
I don't know how you build that if you don't have. I have tools that I use, like the podcast, like YouTube. If you don't have those things, I don't know what to tell you other than your social media presence suddenly has to be a little more intense. Maybe the wrong word.
I think maybe not intense, but intentional.
Intentional. Okay, let's thoughtful.
Yeah. So, it's the whole thing, following people in your genre, interacting with them. The whole bit, like they tell narrators, you need to listen to audiobooks. You can't be a producer. You have to also be a consumer. Same thing goes for authors.
Right.
You need to read other stuff in your genre. And it's hard to make the time, but you still can.
And don't be this person. If I follow you on Blue Sky, don't immediately turn around and DM me offering to send me a copy of your novel or tell me to buy your novel, or, hey, I'm an editor and you need stuff edited and I'm available for you. It's like, don't do that. I haven't even talked to you yet. What the fuck gives you the right to jump into my DMs and spam me with shit? So I get very annoyed by that. There are certain social media faux pas that are just, drive me crazy.
Yeah, and given the choice between say, I think this is really only a Facebook thing, given a choice between friending somebody and following their professional page, start by following their professional page first. Because some people have more distinct boundaries because of past experiences. I have been stalked. I have been stalked to the point where folks have contacted me and it was like, oh, great. Shit. And that's kind of terrifying. And you may not mean to be terrifying, but boundaries are great.
Boundaries are awesome.
Boundaries are awesome. So yeah, and I know, JR, not all authors differentiate the professional and personal pages. But it's, in some cases, you have the two accounts because you may be interacting with peers on one, and then you've got folks that aren't necessarily within your circle, but they're still they still want to know what you're doing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, we are kind of out of time for today.
No.
It's amazing. We didn't even miss Terry. Fuck that guy.
Terry?
Yeah, who's that?
Oh, the cats. It's been a very
non-cat episode.
Yeah. It's been a very feline light episode.
Yeah, it's kind of nice for a change. Kind of nice for a change.
I maybe I'll have to go get one of mine. for After Dark.
Well, if you have a question or comment about this episode, you can go visit deadrobotsociety.com, punch that contact button, and send us an email. You can find us on Facebook at the Dead Robot Society writing community until we kill it. You can join Discord, our Discord server. We have a link in the show notes for you. And we'd be happy to have you there. And you can find us on YouTube every Saturday at 3 p.m. CST, except when we're not. Like and subscribe so you know when we're live. And if you really want to support the show, you can find us at patreon.com/DRS podcast and buymeacoffee.com/DRS podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you get access to exclusive live shows like the one that's coming up in just about 10 minutes. And at the $10 level, you get your name read. And our $10 patrons are Juan Valentin, James Terrell, Antoine Batts, Tony L. Joy, Rick Shaw, Lisa Slack, Isabel Cushy, and Tim Niederreiter. Thank you to all of our patrons for making this show possible. Wow.
Good job.
Another Saturday wasted talking to people who occasionally talk back. What the hell's wrong with us?
I liked it. I liked it.
You would.
I know. Yeah.
All right, folks. We will talk to you next week. We might even have a Terry. It's possible.
And Terry might have a functioning bathroom.
I don't believe that for a freaking second. With that, we are out of here. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for spending some time with us. It was fun.
Later, y'all.
Until then, take care.